Glad to be here.
Like I just said then before we hit record, when I saw you on Dr. Chafee's channel, I thought you were absolutely awesome. And I had to speak to this guy. I knew I had to speak to you and just hear your story and, share the tale of a 40-year carnivore diet. This is something that, it's obviously taken the internet by storm over the last few years. And I feel quite late to the party myself. I should have been doing this a long time ago. But you obviously beat the curve. You beat everybody to it, really. So I'm eager now to really listen to what, this journey has done for you so far. So just very quickly, Rick, just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I'm Rick. You've probably seen me on the internet for a while. I was pretty popular as the 40-year carnivore. And what it came from was just, there was actually someone that was interviewing people. His name was Joey, and he was interviewing carnivores. And I just happened to watch his video. Now, I had seen other people on the internet that they were into what they call the carnivore lifestyle. And you've probably seen Paul Saladino. At that time, he was pushing the carnivore diet. And then, of course, you had Dr. Sean Baker, who was also talking about the carnivore diet. And I thought, that's kind of strange. They're talking about this carnivore diet, but really, they're just talking about my heart attack diet. Because when I was a teenager, as a way of being rebellious, my dad was very much into healthy foods. He wasn't a vegetarian, but he was not a big fan of red meat. He would eat fish, he would eat some chicken, but fat was considered to be bad. So they replaced the butter in the house with margarine. And they were using Crisco and Wesson instead of beef tallow or lard. So I kind of grew up with this whole mentality. Plus, they had the whole grain, whole food kind of thing, lots of vegetables. And I was a kid that just didn't like vegetables. So when I started to see these people on the internet, and at that time I was still taking care of my mom, who was not doing so well. And my mom was another person who hated red meat. She would never eat steak. Just the sight of steak would make her sick. So every time that I would cook my meal, my mom would complain. So I had to go outside and cook, or sometimes I would even drive away and cook in the grill in the back of my truck, because my mom, just the smell of barbecue would make her just feel really bad. So when I grew up, it was like low fat, more vegetables, whole grains. And I just thought, man, I'm eating this way because I'm basically rebelling. I was a very small kid and very skinny. So about time I was 15, I started this diet. Then I started seeing these people on the internet 4 or 5 years back. I thought, that's weird. They're saying that this is a healthy diet. I mean, seriously? Eating a bunch of meat is supposed to be good for you? And it kind of hit me. I thought, well, that doesn't make any sense. But then as I've gotten to know more and more of these people, and I've been spending a lot of time looking at the examples. You look at these carnivore channels, and you'll see that you have people who have had all these chronic health issues. And then when they start saying their age, then I really start thinking, well, this person is 40-something, 50-something. Well, shoot, at the time, I was over 50. I'll be 56 this summer. And I look at all the problems like arthritis, digestive issues, and people have had their colon removed. They've had just unbelievable amounts of medications. They've had depression. They've had all these things. I'm thinking to myself, I've never had any of these problems. The worst health issue I've ever had was a cold or flu. And once in a while, I might drop something on my foot or fall down the stairs. I mean, that would happen. And of course, I know people that have fallen down the stairs and ended up seriously injured. But then I think about all the times that I've been bumped around and been in accidents and, things have happened, and I really have never had a major problem. Also, I haven't been to a doctor since 1996, and I haven't been to a dentist since 1986. And the people that I know and work with, they go to regular doctor's appointments. A lot of times I need to meet with someone. He says, no, I got a doctor's appointment, so I have to keep changing the meeting if I'm doing a job for someone. Oh, I got to go to the dentist. And I just started putting it all together. I said, interesting. All these other people they have this chronic health issues. They take medications. And then the other thing is they're constantly grazing, as I like to call it. They're having a snack, or I got to grab something to eat. So man, and then I realized, yeah, I'm not like them. And then obviously after I had that first interview, the one with the Joey Schwartz guy, that had almost 300,000 views. And I think the next most popular interview I had was the one that I had with Dr. Anthony Chafee. And I had seen his channel and he only had a few thousand subscribers. And I was looking at this guy and thinking, wow, this guy is extremely intelligent, and he's eating the carnivore diet. He's eating this diet similar to mine, and he's thriving. So I just started putting all this together, and then I became kind of addicted to the carnivore channel. So a lot of times when I'm working or when I'm doing something else, if I can catch Wi-Fi or I have a device I can look at it, I'll watch other people's channels and I'll comment on it. It's become a part of my life. So it's been a long journey, but you have to realize that for the first few decades, I never really thought about it. It was only in the last 4 or 5 years that I really started to think about that this is definitely, it could be a trend, but it's definitely a health food diet and not Rick's heart attack diet.
Yeah, because according to mainstream science, Rick, you should have been dead quite a long time ago.
Yeah,
you should have had a major heart attack by now, buddy.
That's true. The funny thing is, I can outwork 25-year-olds, and I just feel really good. I just spent the last couple of days cutting up a junk car using nothing but, hand tools and a Sawzall. And I'm picking up pieces of metal, throwing it in the truck, moving things around. I sit down, I can squat down on the ground. I don't even use a chair. I can get into places that other people can't get into. And I'm 6'6", and I can get in places that, people that are 5'6" can't get into because of their back. I've never had back trouble. I've never had any arthritis or any of these other issues. I mean, I never even had acne when I was growing up. I was the only kid that didn't get the pimples on his face. So it really is amazing. And I haven't had that heart attack yet. So yeah, if this diet was so bad, and again, I call everything heart attack. It's like when I cook my fried chicken, I call it heart attack chicken. I make a gigantic hamburger, I call a heart attack burger. I have heart attack shrimp, heart attack duck, and that just means it is deep fried in pure lard or tallow. So, and then I don't use margarine or vegetable oil. I use vegetable oil as a fuel. I was putting it in my truck for years. I would never eat that nasty stuff.
Well, Rick, let me show you something really quickly. Something that I know you're going to like. So you see this right here?
Uh-huh.
That's beautiful sirloin or rump steak right there. Yeah, I mean, that's my second steak of the day so far.
That's nice.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe how much meat I could eat. My heart attack burger is 2 pounds of meat. And even though I'm poor and I don't get steak very often, when I do get steak, I can knock out 3 or 4 pounds in one meal.
2 pounds of meat in a burger?
Yes. It's 4 1/2 pound patties. The thing is like that thick.
We're going to say that's like this thick, right?
Oh, it's like, that much meat. And then I put 8 slices of cheese. And then I make the buns out of pork rinds and eggs.
Oh, that sounds delicious.
Oh, it is. And my chicken is just regular chicken fried in beef tallow. Chicken does not agree with me generally. If I was to eat your typical baked or grilled chicken, it gives me a stomach ache. Sometimes I get gas from it. It's terrible. But when I have heart attack chicken, it's very satisfying. It tastes really good. And of course, the best chicken are the ones that run around the neighborhood, because those are the most flavorful and they're tougher. When you chew on them, I like something you can chew down on and give your mouth exercise. I love tough meat. I like older cows. I'm like Dr. Chafee in that way. I know he likes an older cow. I always did too. It's more flavorful and it's chewier.
How do you like your meat cooked, Rick, just out of interest? Do you go like rare, like medium rare or something, or do you go like the farm?
I prefer the meat to be rare. I do not like overcooked meat. I don't even like char marks on my meat. I do not like anything that's got a lot of like a crust on it or anything. A lot of times I will either slow cook the meat, or when I do cook it on the grill, a lot of times I keep the heat very, very low. I don't like my meat burned.
This sounds great. So, I'm curious, Rick. Let's go back a little bit further because I've heard you talk about, your childhood before. But for those who have never heard about it before, let's go into it a little bit more detail. Not reveal too much, obviously, but what was it? What sparked the whole? Because it sounds like you ate meat purely as an act of defiance, almost.
Well,
It
the
wasn't.
thing is that when I was growing up, a lot of times, my family was not a rich family, so steak was kind of rare. But we had a buffet, an all-you-can-eat place. It was called the Swedenhouse Smorgasbord. And I was going there at least twice a week since I was a little kid. And when you can choose whatever you want to eat, it became a battle. My parents always wanted me to have some salad, but I don't like salad. So what I would do, they would make a deal with me. You can have some meat if you eat the salad. So I would eat a little bit of salad, whatever, and then I would gorge myself with the meat. And then when it came time for dessert, I was like, no, thanks. I don't want it. Because they had that roast beef, they had the Swedish meatballs, they had fish, they had other delicious meats. And I love the smell and the taste and the texture. And, as a kid, they would have a guy with the knife cutting the roast beef, and I'd keep taking more and more. And then I'd eat it, and I'd go back and get some more. So meat, it was always my thing. I always look forward to it. And even the fried chicken, I like that too. I just didn't, the outside of the chicken didn't agree with me. So a lot of times I'd pick that off and just eat the meat. So growing up as a kid, I always saw meat as like the quality food. This was the stuff that, that the good kids got. And then the other stuff, I thought it was like just a bunch of birdseed, crap, duck food, whatever. So I always liked meat. It's just that when I got it, I'd eat as much as I could. But when I didn't have it, I was always disappointed. When I ended up with a peanut butter sandwich, I would usually give that to the ducks near the school. But if I had, let's say, a bologna sandwich, I would eat the bologna and then throw the rest of it to the ducks. So I was a kid that always preferred meat over anything else.
And was it you were just drawn to eating meat then? Because I know that I can speak for that as well. Because I remember when I was a child, we'd go on a holiday as a family, and I'm like 8, 9 years old, and it was almost like a tradition. We'd always find a steakhouse wherever we were. We'd eat there as a family, and I would just gorge myself on meat. I absolutely loved it. And I grew up in a household where I was quite fortunate, actually. So my parents have told me that when my mother was carrying me when she was pregnant, my dad used to work in an abattoir. So he would come home with fresh meat all the time, apparently, and he would feed it to my mother. He would get my mom to eat these fresh sirloin steaks, and I came out a massive baby. I was close to 10 pounds. 10 pounds in weight.
Wow.
So meat has been sort of part of my life, I suppose. But as I grew up, it became almost a bit of a luxury, and I think that's what it is in the West. It's a luxury now. It's a one-off thing, which is really sad. We can get into all that in a second, and why that is. But it sounds as though that's that was really beneficial to me in my development, I suppose, as a person. Because I was able to grow a lot healthier, and I definitely saw that in my gradual development as a teenager as well. It was just evident. So you say then that you started eating meat, and then what happened during school as well? Was that a bit of did it benefit you in any way, eating lots of meat? Or
Well, yes, it did. Before I started my so-called heart attack diet, I was eating mostly whole foods, but I ate some meat, but it wasn't every day. There were days when we didn't have meat. Usually the days when we ate out, I'd stuff myself with meat. And I noticed that I had sort of an up and down a way of doing things. I noticed when I was in school, for example, in junior high, they closed the Swedenhouse Smorgasbord, but then they had a Chinese buffet. And the Chinese buffet, they didn't have as much meat. They did have like a fried chicken wing, but they also had some seafood, and they had like what they call pepper steak, which has little bits of meat in it. So when I would go there, I would pick out every little bit of meat that I could from every different thing, the shrimp, the meat, whatever, and I'd stuff myself with that. And the days when I ate a lot of meat, I'd come home. If I had any homework, I could really blast my way through it. And the next day, I would be like, you know, I'd just be better. I noticed that if I had a test or something that day, I could do a lot better. And then the days when I wasn't eating meat, I got more confused, maybe a little upset. My temper was a lot more unstable, and I wasn't feeling as great. Now, when I switched to the carnivore diet, which was in the summer of '83, then when I started high school, I started off kind of like, well, not that great. But then my grade point average went from C's to basically straight A's. So about halfway through the year, I became a really good student. And that was really shocking to me because when I didn't even want to go to high school. That's why I wanted to get a heart attack so I could get out of it. I was going to drop out of school and maybe take a trade or something like that. But instead, I ended up with basically straight A's and got a scholarship to college. So everything changed in terms of academics. Now, in terms of athletics, I was never, to this day, I'm not into that. I'm not athletic. My extent of athletics was running away from the bullies when I was a kid. That was the one thing I could run away. I never got beat up because they could never catch me. I'm very skinny and I can move really fast. But the interesting thing was, on the carnivore diet, I remained skinny, but I grew a lot taller and I got even faster. So it was before, they could run after me and, eventually I'd tire out. But on the carnivore diet, it wasn't even a contest. If somebody wanted to chase after me, I get about maybe quarter mile and they're breathing hard and I keep on going. But then, of course, after that first year of high school, nobody really bothered me anymore. It wasn't like I was getting picked on all the time. And by 11th grade, my height was growing. I didn't even notice it. It was somewhere in 11th grade, I was about average, maybe a little above average. And by 12th grade, by the time I graduated high school, I was the second tallest kid in the school. There's even a picture of me on my community page on my YouTube channel that shows what I look like, before I started the carnivore diet in junior high. And even the girls were taller than me. Boy, when I got to high school, everything changed. And ever since then, it's been like, I don't know, I can think a lot better. Things that would give me a hard time before didn't. My attitude changed. I don't lose my temper. Like when I was a kid, I was always known as sort of a pothead kind of kid. And after that, it changed. I don't get offended that easily. And now that I realize I've seen all the other carnivore channels, I think it is sort of diet related because I've seen it happen with other people. And I even have a friend that's a former vegan who has switched not to the carnivore diet, but to a meat-based keto diet. And his attitude has completely changed. He's no longer having these panic attacks like he used to. If something goes wrong, it's not like the end of the world. Before, getting a flat tire, that would be a total breakdown moment. And now it's like, just get the spare, no big deal.
I've noticed with me as well, Rick, because, I'm 5 weeks into this now. And I've just noticed so many, I wouldn't say personality changes, but there are definitely changes now in my behavior and the way that I think. My mind, because I made a video on this the other day and it's up online now. And I basically went into detail about how in my mind, Rick, I feel so much more calmer and present. It's just, everything is so much more relaxed. And then I'm judging that now based on how I used to be. And I wasn't an erratic person or anything, but my mind was always busy, like in my mind. I was always thinking about things and, there was just lots of chaos. But now it's just clear. It's just so good, The
one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of other people, they get easily irritated by background noise or other things that are going on. Yeah. And I'm not like that. Sometimes I'll be doing something and people are getting upset about they're trying to eat or whatever, and they hear this noise or if something is bothering them. And I don't really think about it that much because it seems like a lot of times I'm concentrating on what I'm doing and I'm sort of able to tune out everything else. And when I was younger, I could never do that. I was the kind of kid that was easily distracted. If something else was happening, I would turn to that, and then I never got anything done. So I think what you're saying is, only 5 weeks, it's amazing that you'd have that much, of a difference. That's that's something to think about.
For sure, for sure. I've noticed so many differences now. My body feels like it's actually working, and I've been because I've always been throughout the whole of my 20s. I've always tried to find the next level of health because I knew there was another level. I've never been an unhealthy person. I've been very active all my life. I've ate very well, or what I thought was good food anyway. A balanced diet and all this stuff, and lots of protein and everything else. But I've never felt 100%, and I knew that there was more. And I've always been looking for the answer, and I think this is the answer, because now I've gone from here, Rick, to here, and it's just there's no ups and downs. It's just one level all day and all night, and I feel like just fantastic, literally fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. And it's interesting because you kind of get used to it after a while. What I did this past week, I actually took on a challenge from one of my friends because I give my friends fruits and vegetables from my garden all the time. And I had so many of them, I was feeding it to the ducks. The ducks weren't eating it. I was going to compost it. And a couple of friends of mine said, well, why don't you try eating some of your bananas, for a few days and see what happens? And I ate 2 on Monday and 2 on Tuesday. And then Wednesday, I had 5 of them. And by Thursday, I had terrible diarrhea. And then on top of that, my whole attitude switched. I was like, I don't know what to do. And then I got frustrated. And then I felt sad. And I was upset. And can you believe it took until yesterday, Saturday, before finally my regular attitude returned and I was able to continue doing things. But for those days, I had a job to do and I forgot my toolbox, and then I was getting frustrated, and then somebody had a problem that I was trying to fix, and I got kind of mixed up. And again, I was eating my normal carnivore diet. The only thing I did was add 2 bananas and 2 days and 5 bananas the other day. And they're not from the store. They're from my own yard. They are 100% organic, no pesticides, nothing else. And I had that effect. So I can only imagine all the people that drink sodas all day, eat garbage, duck food in bags, and then they wonder why they feel so bad, and they get upset. And I'm beginning to think a lot of the problems that we have must be with the food. But then again, I'm a unique one because I've eaten basically the carnivore diet for so many years that I'm more sensitive than they would be. And I was thinking maybe I could adapt to it. But after 3 days, it was like, why would I even do that? It's just, it just seemed.
Well, the thing is, Rick, right? That people's baseline level of reality, of their consciousness, is a mixture. It's a cocktail of different, chemicals from these plants and everything else. So what they experience, what I've experienced, from most of my life, what I thought was normal, isn't actually normal. We're not supposed to feel that way. And now that I've rid my body of all of the sugar and all of it's just sugar really. It's carbohydrates and sugar and fiber and all these herbs and spices. I haven't ate it for 5 weeks. And everything, my mind is so much more clearer. Everything is just stable. It's like I've got less chemicals in my brain. There's less chemicals interfering with my brain chemistry. That's literally what it is. And it feels fantastic. And now I look at the rest of the world now and I see, that makes a lot of sense why people are the way that they are. It makes perfect sense now. Perfect sense.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen this. A lot of times I've had to deal with people, and it's very difficult for me to understand their reasoning process. But I think a lot of times, I was thinking of an illustration like this. I have a lot of plants in my yard, and I also have a collection of poisonous plants because I love poisonous plants. I have poison wood, poison ivy. I even have a manchineel tree. And if you're not familiar with it, manchineel is a very rare and very toxic tree that is found in Florida. It has tiny little apples. They're, about that big, and they smell like apples and they kind of look like apples. But if you were to bite into one, It would be so bitter. I mean, just getting around them can make your eyes water. Some people that are sensitive, it can make you very sick. And I also have a plant, it's called velvet bean. Down in Barbados and some of those islands, it's invasive. It has a hair that grows on the bean pods. And then when it dries out and the wind blows it, it makes you itch like crazy. They call it cow itch. So, and I've been hit with that a few times. It's one of the few plants that bothers me. I was trying to work on my truck, and that stupid velvet bean kept raining down on me, and I felt terrible. I was itching, and I couldn't think straight. And I ended up tripping and knocking over my tools and everything. I had to go and take a bath for relief. So I thought about it. I thought, I was talking to my vegan friend. I mean, think about it. You're taking in doses of toxic chemicals every day, little by little. That adds up. So I can imagine that, obviously the velvet bean or the poison wood is an extreme example. But if you were taking in small amounts of toxins, it would be doing the same thing. If you're itching or feeling bad, how can you even think straight? You can't go out there and assemble an engine or a carburetor or something like that when you're scratching and you're feeling really bad. You wouldn't want to work with something dangerous if your mind wasn't clear. And I think a lot of times the things that people eat, and I think also too, it's like a stimulation, because something may hurt at first, but then sometimes people like it. They may be stimulated by it. So it makes you wonder if eating all this garbage food that makes a normal person feel bad is actually almost like a drug to them. And maybe that extra adrenaline or whatever releases then makes them want more. So, I mean, it's a little confusing when you think about it. But if you really reason on it, it's like, this is just bad. Why would you do that to yourself? But again, as someone that works with plants and is a gardener, and, I love plants, I realize that they contain things that we don't want to put inside of ourselves. So I think a lot of times people are convinced that these plants are beneficial, but in many ways it may be the opposite. Remember, every plant has a certain insect or animal that can eat it safely, but there is no insect or animal that can eat every single plant in the world. That doesn't exist. So if that's the case, there may be a few plants that we humans can eat. The vast majority of them either make us sick or can kill us. So why would you take the chance? That's the way I see it.
Well, it's true. Everything. Dr. Chafee was the one who woke me up to this. I'd never even considered vegetables being bad for you my whole life. I'd never considered fiber being something that we didn't need either. And when Dr. Chafee, I watched his video, plants are trying to kill you. And I thought, wait a second. He's saying that vegetables contain toxins. Because I've got, I grow some food. Yeah, I grow vegetables. And I'm sat there watching this and I'm thinking, wait a second. So my carrots and my lettuce and my cucumbers, they're all poisonous. Like I shouldn't be eating them. And it really shook my internal world to hear that they've all got toxins in them. And it made perfect sense, obviously, because they're a plant. They're all plants. But we've come up with this name, vegetables, right, to disguise it. And they all contain toxins and they're all interfering with our processes and our internal systems and everything else. And I thought, holy shit, like, that's it. I'm done. I'm not eating another vegetable again. And I haven't since I watched him. And that was 1 week ago.
That's one of the things that make Dr. Chafee's channel very unique, because he's the only one that I know of that, because I think it was when he was in medical school, one of his instructors told him that he doesn't feed his children vegetables. He doesn't eat vegetables. The plants are trying to kill you and stuff like that. Now, as a gardener and as someone that is very much into different types of plants, I learned a long time ago that in the natural world, there are very, very few things that a human being can eat and not become sick, because wild plants, they have to defend themselves against all kinds of attacks. Animals will eat them, insects will eat them, so they use every kind of means that you can think of. They use physical barriers like thorns or just the way that they're shaped. You think about a cactus, or you think about plants with spikes coming out of them. You think about something like, well, any root that would grow in the ground, any insect would love to eat that. So it has to have toxins in it. You think of even something as simple as a banana. I have never seen any animal eat a green banana. It's only when the banana becomes ripe that they will eat it. And most plants have sap. Obviously they use water as a way of producing their food. They use water and carbon dioxide and sunlight, but they have resins in the plant that protect them from being eaten. So every plant has some type of toxin. And we know there are many plants that are toxic to humans. You could think about people that for the holidays, they buy the poinsettia, and everybody knows that those are poisonous, and it has that white sap that comes out of it. But interestingly, there's an insect called the tomato hornworm that eats it. So this insect can eat that plant without a problem, but no other insects do. So what happens is a lot of times a living thing will be adapted to eat just that one thing. Now, if you had a plant that was edible to a wide species of insects or animals, that plant would simply be eaten up and would die and would go extinct. So if you look at the natural world, you'll see there's just so many things out there that cannot exist without defense. But an animal has the option. The animal can run away, or it can fight back, or it can do both. And that's how they defend themselves. So the animals don't have to have toxins. Now, we know that some reptiles and some fish have toxins. For example, there's a puffer fish that's toxic, but that's because it eats a certain type of algae. And if those fish are grown in an area that don't have that algae, they're not toxic. And we know that reptiles such as snakes, like a rattlesnake or water moccasin, they create toxins that they can use to kill other animals that they're going to eat. So obviously they're immune to that because they're able to produce it. And those toxins are usually some type of protein that causes damage in whatever their prey is. But again, they find a way around it. But the vast majority of animals out there are edible because, and even like a rattlesnake, I've cooked and eaten rattlesnake more than once because the toxins are only in the head area. You throw that away and the rest of the meat is good. The thing is that meat or flesh of animals can't be toxic to us because then it would kill them. So if you were in the wild and you were hungry and you had nothing else to eat and you were looking for something safe to eat, well, you could choose from plants, fungi, and animals. You make one wrong choice with fungi and you're dead or very close to it. And with plants, most plants aren't going to kill you, but they're going to make you very sick. And the problem with some plants, they may not make you sick, but they're not digestible. So you might as well eat newspaper because you're going to be eating this plant material and you're going to be starving. But if you were to kill and eat an animal, almost any animal out there is edible to humans, and it contains all kinds of proteins and fats and minerals and all the things that we need to survive, which is interesting in itself. And then if you look at the animals, you'll notice that most animals that are predators, they have their eyes in the front. And most of the animals that are prey, they have it towards the side. So when you think about it that way, as a human being, we don't need to have three-dimensional vision where we can see distance by having our eyes in front like this. You look at something like a duck, they have their eyes on the side. So it just seems like, well, if we were designed to eat wild foods, unless we were farming, we wouldn't have plants that we could trust. So what do we have? We have animals. And then the other thing is that we can create tools. We can throw things. We're very good at throwing things. Other animals are not that good at throwing things. In fact, maybe a chimp could throw something, but I don't know of any other animals that are good at throwing, like a rock or a spear or whatever. And I know many times I've been able to kill an iguana in my yard just by throwing a rock at it. So if you add up all the different things that we're working with, the risk of eating plants and then the abilities that we have, it seems like we were designed more for eating meat than for eating just fruits or especially not vegetables, because nothing in the wild is really edible unless it's prepared. And normally people who eat root vegetables or whatever, they have to either ferment it or they have to cook it. We can eat fruits. There are people that have lived on islands. They've eaten fish and coconuts. Coconuts are basically a big seed. You could do that. But I have a feeling that, when people first move to an area and they're not familiar with the plants, they may try out different plants, but some people may get sick and some people may die. And then the other people learn, well, don't eat that plant. And then, of course, once humans find the plants they want to eat, then they can start growing them. They could clear out an area, plant the things that they like to grow, and then go from there. But again, when you're in the wild, I think the safest thing that you could do would be to eat animals. And that's kind of why my theory kind of worked the way that it did, because even though I call it the heart attack diet, it seemed like it was a lot better to die of a heart attack than to be poisoned by some dangerous plant toxins and really suffer on your way out. The heart attack seemed like the quick way to go. You're strong and healthy, and then one day you just fall over, and then you drop dead, rather than slowly killing yourself with who knows what, chemicals or in some plant.
Well, I mean, you're 56 soon, Rick. I mean, this heart attack's, it needs to hurry up and come, We're still waiting.
Well, they told me by my 50s I would have a massive heart attack. The two things they threatened me with was colon cancer and a heart attack. Well, I don't know if I have colon cancer, but I feel fine. And as for a heart attack, you would be surprised at how much work I can do. When my truck broke down, I was riding my bike everywhere. I hadn't been on a bike for more than 10 years. I don't get tired. It's not a problem. And in fact, I still do it from time to time just to save gas. But yeah, if I'm going to have a heart attack, like you said, I better hurry up and have it, because I don't know how much longer I can go before it just explodes.
No, it's great, man. It's so good. It's so good. Because there's a lot to unpack there with what you just said. I think the first bit that we'll go into is that human beings, we are carnivores. And I've never really thought about that before. Obviously, when you take science class at school, you hear about all the history classes or whatever. You hear about, we're hunters and everything else. But nobody ever told me that, yeah, we are just carnivores. We're supposed to eat meat. That's what we're designed to do. We're not omnivores. Yes, we can survive. Let's say, for instance, an animal dies out and we have to move to another area to hunt. We can eat certain foods along the way to keep us alive, but we're not designed to eat solely plants. And that's just a fact. And I've realized this now. There are no real long-term benefit. Yes, they contain vitamins and minerals and some essential stuff that we need, but it's in very small amounts. And it's not enough to sustain you over the long term, because we need high amounts, obviously, and we can get all of it in meat. Red meat literally contains everything. It contains everything. And yet here we have, the modern day, people are pushing this plant-based stuff, and they're having to take supplements in order to meet their, nutritional requirements. It kind of speaks for itself, Rick, doesn't it? How plant-based doesn't work. But everybody else on a meat-based diet now, all of the stories that I'm hearing are the transformations, not just in body weight, and not just in health, but in mental health as well. People's depression, anxiety, and even schizophrenia and all these other bipolar disorder and all ADHD. It's just clearing up. And then, coming off medication that they've been on for 20 years in 6 months. Just miraculous stories like this. And then you've still got people on the other side who are like, oh, well, there's no scientific evidence. Well, like, actually, we've got all these people that are having fantastic results. Maybe that speaks for itself,
Well, when you go online, you see a lot of these popular vegan influencers, especially the ones that are into so-called vegan bodybuilding. You can see they have good physique and they show off. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, is this guy really a vegan, or is, he maybe has a little protein powder or something like that? And most of them, they take a bunch of supplements and they have some kind of weird, way of doing things. And I don't know, it doesn't make sense. But in the real world, all the people I know that are long-term vegans, they are in bad shape. They tend to be, well, even if they're lean, there's certain characteristics I've noticed. And one of them, obviously, is the mood issues. they tend to be quite moody, and you never know. They may be nice one day, and then the other day they're mad at you. They're very easy to offend, and if something goes wrong, they will ruin their day. And you can kind of tell. I mean, up till I would say between, your teens up to maybe your 40s, they can get away with it. And then after that, there just seems to be this degradation that takes place. I notice a lot of times their hair starts thinning, and then they lose, they even lose hair on their body, on their arms and legs and all that. And they lose that. And it's really weird because they may stay in good shape, but then their skin looks kind of thin and, sometime, usually, like I said, by their 40s or 50s, they just start going down like that. And then, of course, the digestive issues. If you've ever been around vegans, they produce more gas than my biogas digester that I cook with. There's all the time, I mean, it's a constant thing. And it's like, what's that smell? Oh, well, I had too many Brussels sprouts. Oh, not again. Don't do that. I hate that. It just gets to be kind of tiring. And then they're always drinking out of their water bottle. I don't think you can talk to them for more than 15 minutes before they have to take some water. And then there's always the snacking. And I notice a lot of them, they have these like chips, these vegan chips or whatever. I've had them many times. I give them to the ducks. A lot of times they'll leave it behind. Oh, throw it out. I throw it to the ducks. Not even the ducks want to eat that stuff. So, and it's kind of baffling to me. So you have people that are supposed to be somehow very healthy, but they seem to always have problems. And then their mood is kind of up and down. And, it's quite funny. And of course, they always have to share their latest videos that they have online from the vegan influencers. A lot of times they've sent me like Michael Greger's video or that stupid book that he has, How Not to Age or How Not to Die or something like that. I said, yeah, do you realize this guy's a few years younger than me? Oh, no. Do you realize how old I am, right? Think about it. Okay. Well, he's healthy. Okay, that's fine. Says, oh, you're just genetic. You look younger because of your genetics. I said, well, that's not really true. I look younger than my parents did at my age, but you look at Michael Greger as like, you really want to look like this guy? I mean, come on. I'm skinny. Yeah, I'm skinny, but I don't look like that. I mean, his face, and he just looks like he's in his 60s and he's like early 50s, and he writes a book about health. And all these vegans, they're so funny because they think that they're so healthy. And yet, in the end, it's like, I don't know, they don't seem to be that healthy. Plus, we had friends of the family that were vegan at that time. Of course, they didn't call it vegan. It was vegetarian, but they didn't eat any meat or eggs. And I know one of them, she died of skin cancer. And she was a long-term vegan. So, I thought, that's weird. And then another friend of our family who was a vegan had a heart attack. At like 50, 52 years old or whatever. He was always running and exercising, or had a heart attack. He went for a jog and boom, had a heart attack. Now, he was able to survive, but he had to have several bypasses. So, you see this, you think, well, how does that make sense? I know these people are not cheating. They're not going to McDonald's. I've seen them eat. I've seen them cook up that mulch in the kitchen, and call that food. They eat that stuff. I've tried to eat that stuff in the past, and I can't get past the taste of it. Every time that I've tried to eat that so-called food, I can get 2 or 3 bites and I have to run and throw it up. And yet it didn't improve their health. So what's the point? That's another reason why I continued on the heart attack diet. I even tried a plant-based diet once. I lasted about 7 months. My health was destroyed.
I did it for 1 month, and it was the worst month of my life.
See what I mean? I did it for 7 months. I started in the beginning of 93. It was sort of a challenge I accepted because I do these from time to time. I've even tried to eat duck food. Well, I call anything that's processed, I call it duck food. I've eaten pizza and I've eaten donuts and all this nasty stuff. And it's so hard to even swallow the nasty stuff. Most of the time I'll throw it up because even you can swallow it down, but once it hits my stomach, it starts to churn and I feel like a pain and I have to throw it up. I ate one time 2 donuts on a challenge, and I started getting sick instantly. I started getting like this sinus pain, and then my stomach was like making funny noises, and then you get that feeling where it's trying to come up. I'm like, oh no, I got to go somewhere and throw it. I threw it up right outside, all over the place. It was disgusting, and I felt so bad. I was just sick, and I said, you know what, I got to go home. And the first thing I did when I went home, I got some ground meat and I cooked that up and I ate that. And it took me about 2 or 3 hours to recover. That was just from 2 donuts. And then I've had like bread, a sandwich. I've had a submarine sandwich. And again, it didn't affect me as bad, but it still affected me. And it's like the pizza. I've eaten that. And about 3 hours later, I got violent diarrhea. And even like those so-called fried chicken, like from Kentucky Fried Chicken or one of those places, I've eaten that. If I eat the outside of the chicken along with the inside, it's diarrhea express. Within 3 to 5 hours, straight to the toilet. And it can take 2 days to recover. That's how bad it is. So I learned from experience, stay away from that stuff. If I eat the foods that I normally eat, I have a trouble-free experience. But the other thing that really surprised me is how many people I know that take antacids and medications because they get acid, I guess, comes up back into their mouth. And I thought, I've never really had that happen. But the other thing I've noticed is that when I eat non-carnivore foods, I have to drink a lot of water because I just can't swallow it because it tastes so bad and it feels so nasty. So if I was to eat bread, a sandwich, I have to drink at least 2 cups of water just to get it down. But when I eat my foods, let's say I have some ground beef stew or a steak, I don't drink any water at all with either of those foods. Even the chewiest steak, I'm sitting there chomping on this steak, usually from like a top round or something that's very tough. I don't drink any water when I eat the steak. My heart attack burger, no water there. Heart attack chicken, no water there. I just don't drink water with my meal. Breakfast, usually, steak and eggs or pork and eggs. Don't drink any water. But if I eat other non-carnivore foods, I have to drink water. And I always thought, well, it's because it tastes so bad. But I literally can't swallow it. That's the other funny thing. If I try to eat non-carnivore foods, a lot of times it starts to back up and then I can't swallow. And then I have to either drink water or spit it out. So I don't know if that's just an adaptation or it's just something foreign. But I see people eating this stuff all the time. They eat bags of chips and snacks and stuff like that. And then they wash it down with a soda. I can't imagine even trying to do that. I can't even drink a soda. I think the last time I drank a soda was probably in the 1980s because just the smell of it makes me feel really sick, like a Pepsi or Coke. The worst is that Mountain Dew. That is disgusting. It looks like vegetable oil and horse urine. It's just disgusting. I'm thinking, how can anyone drink that? And down here, a lot of people drink that lime drink, Sprite or whatever it is. That's another one I don't understand. I mean, for me, it's just water. That's all I ever drink. And I do make kefir, or whatever you call it, from milk. And I guess technically that would be sort of a drink. But no, water is all that I drink. So to me, it's just hard to imagine why anybody would want to live or eat the way they do. And I think, and then again, you look in their medicine cabinet, they have all the Pepto-Bismol and Alka-Seltzer and, the Prilosec and all that other stuff. You look at my medicine cabinet, it's just basically a few bandages and a lot of dust and some cobwebs. And that's it. I don't have any painkillers. I don't have any aspirin or ibuprofen. I don't need that. If I get a headache, that means that I'm catching the flu or I'm just not eating enough. So if I don't feel good, I just hit the refrigerator. That's my medicine cabinet. I'll have sometimes if I don't have seafood for a while, I may feel a little bit like my sinuses get worse. So I'll hit the seafood. I'll have some shrimp or some fish and then it gets better. So it's like they say, let your food be your medicine. My refrigerator is my medicine cabinet. And there's nothing, in my house that's not in the refrigerator. That's the other thing. And a lot of homes that I've had to clean out, they have a rodent problem. And I've never had a rodent problem in my house because all the food's in the refrigerator. There's nothing out there. There's no bread. There's no pasta. There's no flour. There's nothing. Everything I eat is in the freezer or refrigerator. So I guess, and then the other thing is I don't even generate any garbage. I don't throw anything out. The only thing I throw out is a few plastic packages that the meat comes in. The rest of that stuff that people throw out, I don't throw it out. So my garbage can usually has trash in it from some place I cleaned out, not from my own food. And the little bit of food scraps I do get, I throw them outside to the ducks, and then whatever they don't eat, I grind it up with a lawnmower and compost it. So it just,
I mean,
imagine.
it took a bit of waste, Rick. That one thing I've noticed as well is that not just I'm generating less waste in my garbage bin, but I'm also generating less waste on the toilet as well.
Yeah,
Because, the amount of crap that we're eating, well, it's down to what I've learned, through studying Dr. Chafee's channel and various others, is that what we're actually, excreting is fiber. When we eat a big meal, we got lots of carbohydrates on there, maybe some potato and mixed vegetables. What we're excreting is all that fiber. We don't digest fiber, and there is no nutritional value to fiber at all. This is what I've learned, and all my life, and you heard it as well, most likely. Fiber is good for the digestive system. We're meant to take it in because it helps clean everything out. Well, actually, what you're shitting out is the fiber. That's all you're doing. And now, I've gone from going once or twice a day to once or twice a week. And that may sound like, okay, maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit. Maybe it's 3 times, maybe 4 at a push, but it's very, very quick, very small amounts. I know it's not a nice thing to talk about, but you know what I mean. It's just a massive change, and I've realized my body now is absorbing everything. Everything's being absorbed. There's no waste at all.
Yeah,
and some people say, well,
I go once a day. I always have gone once a day, but the amount is probably like that. It's not very much. So I always thought that was kind of interesting. And they say, well, the meat is backing up in your colon. It's going to rot. You're going to get colon cancer. But I never had that happen because when I have eaten vegetables, it goes right through. I've never had anything in my system longer than a day. So let's say that I was to eat, a banana or something. You could tell the difference because within 24 hours, it's going to come out more. And then if you were to eat something that had seeds in it, the seeds go right through, you'll see it. So I know that 24 hours is a maximum I've had anything in my system by doing experiments. So I tell them, well, how can that be? Well, it's somewhere else, it must be. I said, yeah, but it's a tube, you're putting something through a hose. It has to come out, it has to go through. So how's it going to come out without pushing what's in front of it out of there? But you can't really reason with the vegan or vegetarian because they're convinced that what they've been told is right. So, you got 20 pounds of waste backed up in your system. And it drives me nuts when I see these vegan scammers over there talking about you have to cleanse yourself with juices and then, you have to fast and do this and that. And, you have to eliminate. It's all about elimination. You want it to go through your system as fast as possible. I said, well, then why even bother to eat? Why are you going to eat this stuff? If you want it to go through your system, just give your body a break and don't eat and just starve to death. That's all. I don't see the point of it. And then when you realize how an herbivore actually eats, you think about how a cow eats. Cow's not actually eating grass. The cow is just composting the grass. The cow is actually eating bacteria. So the bacteria are turning the grass into proteins and fats, and they're burning off the carbohydrates to keep themselves going, and the cows are actually digesting bacteria. So it does, none of it makes any sense. You're eating all this fiber, and what is it doing? It's just going through your system and going into the toilet, going into the sewer system and backing that up. And it just doesn't make sense. They keep talking over and over. I guess if they say the same stupid thing over and over again, it must be true that the fiber is good and it's going to be healthy for you and so on. But I just don't believe it. I don't even know how anybody else believes it.
Yeah, well, there's no scientific evidence at all that suggests or even says that fiber is an essential part of a human diet. There's none at all. I've looked everywhere. I can't find any of it. I've got studies right here, Rick. These are studies. There's one or two articles, but they're not the normal articles. But these are studies. Saturated fat does not clog the arteries. Coronary heart disease is a chronic inflammatory condition. It's not caused by saturated fat and meat and everything else. Basically, cholesterol is good for you. There's nothing bad about it at all. I can't find anything that says, we shouldn't be eating cholesterol, or we should limit the amount. And when you go back to like the 80s, when all this stuff was brought in, low fat, zero fat, we should limit the amount of red meat. Well, what happened? We reduced our intake by 30%, but all chronic illnesses and diseases, including heart disease and everything else, skyrocketed. It tripled, and it's been doing that now for the last 50 years, and it's showing no signs at all of slowing down. So it can't be cholesterol and steak that's causing the problem, because we've limited it, we've dropped it. So what's the problem?
The other thing too is, when I was younger, everybody used to smoke cigarettes. Everywhere you went, they all smoked. I would say half the people in this town were smoking cigarettes. So you would think now it's pretty rare. You only see a few people that are smoking. So you think they'd be healthier, but they're not. They're actually, like you said, I know several people that have heart issues. I have 3 friends that have heart issues. I have one friend that's already had a heart attack. And he was actually one of the friends that kept telling me that I need to change my diet because I'm going to get a heart attack and I want to die, and he didn't want to lose his friend. But I laughed about it. Who cares about a heart attack? But he's the one that got the heart attack. And like I said, I got another friend that he has heart failure because he gets out of breath and, can't keep up. Of course, he is overweight, and he was always fat-free. Anything that was fat-free, that's what he wanted. And me, I'm hitting the lard and the tallow, and I don't care about the fat. My mother used to tell me that if I put lard and tallow on my skin, I would get acne and my hair would fall out. Well, I never got acne, and my hair didn't fall out. I use lard and tallow to this day. I challenge anyone to find a 55-year-old with darker hair that doesn't color it. So these fats are not bad for you. They're good for you. I work outside all the time. I haven't been sunburned since I was a teenager. And I'm constantly putting tallow and lard. I make my own soap. I make my own soap out of lard and tallow and sodium hydroxide that I make from salt. Or I even put washing soda. So everything I do is like against what they told me. And it doesn't seem to hurt me. I'm thinking, well, how could that be? How can I be all these years eating and living this way and still be alive? And all these other people that were pushing their nonsense with their low-fat and plant-based nonsense, they're the ones that have the problems. They're the ones that are on the prescriptions. I've never been on a prescription in my life. I work outside. I've been cut and injured all over the place. I've never had an infection. I cut myself today on a piece of rusty metal, and it'll be healed in a few days. See, it's already starting to heal. I heal faster than anybody else. I have lots of energy. So why is that? Why is it that the people that have trouble with their blood sugar, they're the ones that are having the injuries that don't want to heal? They're having this nerve pain. They're having back pain. Everybody I know has back pain. You know who's never had back pain? This guy. Never had it. And I'm 6'6" tall, and I've never had back pain. I ride in a rough riding truck, on a bicycle. I sit down in the worst places. My mattress is so old, it's got springs coming out of it, and I don't have a back problem. They got to buy special shoes and special mattresses and a seat for their car and all that, and they have back trouble. So none of it makes sense. I don't wear glasses. I have friends that are younger than me that have to wear glasses to read. I have no trouble reading, Anytime that I have to read something, unless the light is low, the light is low, I have to turn the light on. But other than that, I don't need glasses. I can hear just fine. So where's the negative side? Eating a carnivore diet hurts you how? Why haven't I suffered yet? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, does it? Because, the low fat and the zero fat nonsense. Our bodies are made of two things: protein and fat. So we need fat. Especially cholesterol. Cholesterol is so vital. The brain is made up of 60, 70% fat. Most of that is cholesterol. I'm not going to get into all the science about saturated fat because, you can find it online. But our bodies are made of fat, right? Our cells are made of fat. They all require lots and lots of fat. And one thing I've noticed, Rick, from just consuming, pounds and pounds of red meat per day, is that my body now feels on fire. It feels like it's alive, Parts of my body where I had aches and pains, I had weak muscles in my back, which I just couldn't get going. And now all of a sudden they've come to life. It's like as if they've got everything they need to get functioning. And after watching Dr. Chafee and listening to the science that he presents, now it makes perfect sense. It all makes perfect sense. Even just the story of how all of this has come about and why it's being pushed. Are you familiar with it all about, the corporatization of food and its, all of its interests in, the sugar interest, for example, how they've interwoven into, all of our government institutions and everything else? You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that because a lot of it comes down to the monetary system. So what they've done, they've made it into a for-profit business where every quarter they try to make a bigger profit. So what they try to do is take lower quality products and make them edible and then make them addictive so that people will keep coming back to buy them, and then they can raise the price. So yeah, what they've done, they've turned food, which is sort of a natural process of growth and harvesting and so on, into basically just manipulating markets. They'll get a certain amount of crops, then they'll pay people not to grow other crops. They'll even destroy food so that way it raises the price. Rather than a natural system where, let's say that you were growing crops and you couldn't sell them, instead of throwing them away, you throw them to the animals. If you had a lot of organic, like grains or whatever, or you had fruits or something you couldn't sell and you didn't want to compost, you could give it to the animals. I mean, cattle will eat anything. They'll eat grass, they'll eat, seeds, they'll eat fruits. Goats are the best of all, because a goat could replace a wood chipper, basically. If you're trimming your yard, you could feed it to the goat, and the goats can convert that into meat and milk. So instead, they have a factory. They have a big factory, and they take a bunch of food-like substances and mix them together, add in some chemicals to make it addictive, and then sell it. And they sell this crap as breads and cereals, pasta, and all this nasty stuff, the snack foods, candy bars, whatever. They're getting these ingredients from all over the world, and they're buying and selling them on the commodities in the futures market. And then they're just selling it to the people. They could care less if it's nutritious. They could care less, whatever. Yeah, maybe they'll add some synthetic chemicals and call them vitamins. Oh, this cereal is fortified with so many vitamins and minerals. Instead of just telling people, well, have, 6 eggs and a piece of meat for breakfast. Like I would eat, 6 eggs and a piece of meat. Instead, they're eating these stupid Pop-Tarts and toaster things and cereal and just a bunch of nasty crap, cheap garbage that they've jacked up the price. And by the way, that stuff isn't cheap. If you look at the cost of weight per cereal versus something like ground meat, the meat's actually cheaper. So the big food industry is turning a factory, a man-made institution, into something that animals have been doing for a very long time. And they do it much more efficiently. They're solar powered, and their emissions are actually good for the soil. So instead of putting out toxic chemicals, you have a cow walking around a field putting out constant poop that falls on the ground and then gets eaten by fungi and turned back into soil. Plus, it spreads urine, which actually waters the plants and keeps the process going. So, it is kind of interesting. But when you see what the food industry has done, you can see, like with synthetic things like Crisco and vegetable oil, they convinced the people that it was good because maybe it was clean. It was made inside of a factory instead of something you got from a farm. And then that's the other thing too. They've got people completely brainwashed. Like when we had this virus where they were worried about germs that are in the area. And what they don't tell you, and this is the one thing that I've learned from gardening, there is no life without microorganisms. All of us, we have bacteria and fungi and all these things that are kind of coexisting. And a good, healthy garden soil is the same way. When you have these so-called food-like products that are grown in soil that's been strip mined over the years, then they have to put synthetic nitrogen and other chemicals in there to make it grow. They use large amounts of equipment to harvest it. They process it. They break it open. They add bleaching chemicals and they add who knows what to it. I mean, you see how they make vegetable oil, crushing all that stuff up, using solvents to extract it. It's like an oil refinery. That's not the kind of place you'd eat food. Look at all the herbicides they use. I've always been against things like Roundup, glyphosate. I am 100% against herbicides. I don't use them. I don't even, my neighbors spray them along the fence. I douse it with so much water, it almost floods it out. And they learn not to do that because I let the ducks eat the weeds. And if they're bothering me, I just pull them out. I'll go there and pull it out. But if I lived on a farm and I had ruminant animals like a goat, I could just turn the goats loose in there and they eat all that anyway. So, but yeah, the big food industry, they make a lot of money. And then they buy the politicians. They get what they want. And then this is, I think, one of the reasons why people are unhealthy. And then the other problem is a lot of these big food companies, they own the pharmaceutical companies. So not only are they feeding them a bunch of crap and making them sick, now they have to take their medications just to be able to tolerate life because they've been poisoned by the crap that came out of their factory. It's disgusting.
Yeah, that is the issue in it. It's food has been turned into a business rather than just for the sake of nutrition only. And we eat now for taste rather than nutrition. Because we're all addicted to it. And I'm fully aware of how addictive carbohydrates and sugar are, and but I didn't really know to the extent in myself just how addicted I really am. These last 5 weeks, even though I felt great, they've been incredibly tough, like really tough to not eat sugar, to not eat carbohydrates, to not reach for that biscuit or whatever. It's 9 o'clock at night and I need to eat some cereal because I'm craving. It's quite shocking really just how much of a grip they have on society. And the damage it is causing, like you said, and they're creating the problem and they're providing the solution, which is causing more of a fucking problem, It's just one big vicious circle. But,
Yeah,
it's now people are slowly starting to, get to grip with it, I think.
it's amazing to me because the thought of being addicted to something nasty like that, I can't put the pieces together because when I see people eating things like that, eating the cereals and the donuts and, the chips and all that, I always think of that as like the low quality duck food, the stuff that you eat because you have no choice, that you're poor. But I'm poorer than any of them are in terms of my income being so low, and yet I'd like to eat meat. I will go and get the meat on sale and I'll eat that. So when I think of food, the first thing I think of is meat. So at the top of my list would be a delicious steak. And then just below that, maybe a big fat duck, something that I could catch and cook. And then it goes down from there. I'll catch an iguana or a wild chicken or whatever I can get. But I just, there's no world that I would ever eat something like a biscuit. I mean, why would I eat that? It looks like a sponge. It looks like something you'd wash your car with. It doesn't look like something you'd want to eat. To me, food has a certain look and a certain smell to it. I mean, I'll eat meat. I don't even mind eating raw meat. I don't do it because I don't think it's safe. But when I see a piece of meat, I see that as food. But when I see something else, something that you would buy in a restaurant or whatever, I just don't see it as food. You go to a steakhouse, I see the steak as food, but I see the sides as just unnecessary. I don't see the point of it. Why would you waste your time with a baked potato? I would just have two steaks. And that's the way I've always thought. I think the meat is what I want. That's why the few times that I eat out, I mean, I haven't eaten out in probably more than a year, but I always go to a buffet or smorgasbord because I will eat just the meat. I don't want anything else. I don't want the rice. I don't want the pasta. I just, and then people tell me, well, they're tempted by it. And you see it on, like you said, on some of these carnivore channels. And the one disadvantage I have is I just don't see the attraction. I don't see why anybody would want that versus a steak. To me, like, let's say I'm on the road, I'm hungry. I can't go to any restaurant because they don't have anything I want. So I have to go to the supermarket and I'll have to buy a steak or ground beef or whatever. Then I'll have to take the grill out of my truck or behind my seat and then cook it up. And many times, like if I'm away working, I'll just cook it right up there in the parking lot of the supermarket. But anybody else, they could go to eat in a fast food place. But if I go there, let's say I ordered a hamburger, I would eat the burger, and then the rest of it is waste. So what's the point? You get such a tiny little amount of meat for the money that you pay. And again, maybe people are tempted by that other stuff, but it doesn't tempt me. I don't find it, it's like some people that are addicted to pornography. I don't find that appealing in any way. There's just some things that I don't like. And when it comes to food, the only thing I see as food is basically meat and eggs and some dairy, and that's it. Anything else, if I'm going to have something that's not meat, it's going to be a fruit. It's going to be something that I pick from a tree and I open it up with my own hands and eat it, and that's it. But to go and buy something, I would never buy fruits or vegetables from a store because to me, I don't know where that came from. So if I was forced to eat survival food, I would go and harvest it myself. And then that way I know where it came from. The meat I'll buy from the store because meat is meat, unless it's one of those fake meats, the Beyond Meat or whatever. But every time that somebody I know has eaten that, they didn't like it, I threw it to the ducks. Even they wouldn't eat it. So if somebody gave me a piece of mystery meat, I'd throw a piece of it to the ducks. And if they eat it, then it's probably safe to eat. Other than that, I'd stay away from it. But, again, you're new to the carnivore diet, so you can see the difference. I've been doing it for so long, it's kind of the opposite. When I eat non-carnivore foods, like when I tried with the bananas, I got sick. So now it's reinforced in my mind, this food is not good. So once you've been on the carnivore diet for a really long time, and it becomes part of your life, that everything else, you see it as a threat. You don't see it as something to be desired. You see it as like, oh, that's the enemy. I got to stay away from that because it's just going to make me feel sick.
I'm starting to think that way, Rick. That's how I'm starting to see things now. And that's naturally occurring. It's not something that I'm thinking about. I'm seeing this food now as like almost, well, wait a second, this stuff is not going to make me feel good in the long term. It's making me really hesitate about putting it in my mouth. And when I do eventually have that steak after a long day, like for instance today, I haven't eaten in, I don't know, that steak right there is the first meal I've had in over 24 hours. And today I've had a long workout. I had a huge workout this morning. I've been out in the garden. I'm renovating my house at the moment, so I've been doing lots of work in the garden, out in the sun all day. But I felt fantastic. And I really, really look forward to just cooking my meat and my eggs. And my God, man, Rick, the taste is just unbelievable after that long, arduous day. It's just so good. It feels amazing. Feels amazing, man.
And the thing is, like somebody like me, I don't season my food at all. I don't even use salt. I mean, I use salt on my heart attack chicken and sometimes on seafood. I do like that. But with beef, I never, ever, ever season. I will not, if I go to somebody's home and they have a barbecue, they put seasoning on it, I will wash it off with a hose because I don't like seasoned meat. And I don't use salt. You see a lot of the carnivore influencers, they eat off a cutting board and they put salt and they dip the meat in salt. I don't do that. What I do, I just take a piece of meat, I grab it with my hands, I start chewing on it. Like my friends call me the caveman, and I just enjoy the meat. You could see a video of me on my channel when I was eating engine cooked steak, and I'm just chewing away on it. It was very tasty. So once you become a real carnivore, you love the meat and you don't want to mess it up with anything else. And I think that's, again, if there's a steak in my refrigerator and I'm thinking of what to eat, I have other meats in there, I'm always going to go for the steak first because that's the one thing that I crave. When I don't really get hungry either. This is the other thing. I don't get hungry, but If I don't eat, I don't feel good. I eat 3 times a day. I wake up, the first thing I do is start cooking breakfast. I have my 4 to 6 eggs, and I'll have a piece of meat with it and probably some cheese or yogurt. And then around noon or when I finish lunch, finish work, it's lunchtime. And lunch can be anything from heart attack chicken to ground meat, steak, to whatever else I have. And I look forward to that. So, like, if I'm getting ready for lunch, let's say I'm still working, and I'm either going to cook on the engine or I'm going to drive home. I start thinking I can smell the steak, I can hear it sizzling, and I start getting that desire. I'm going to have the steak. I eat the steak, or I eat the ground beef, or whatever it is, and then I feel so good, and then I go right back to work. Other people I know, they have their lunch, and then their energy goes straight down.
Yeah,
They just they can't stay awake. And then it's like, you try to talk to them, they're like, oh, okay, they're not paying attention. And meanwhile,
they're in a food coma.
and I don't even know, I didn't know that until recently. It's some kind of blood sugar thing, I guess. And then after work, come home, take my bath. While I'm taking a bath, I'll put the meat on the stove and get it cooking. Or if it's a steak, I'll get the griddle hot and then to go there and cook it up. Have that. If it's chicken, I'll get the tallow heated up. I put a pot on the stove, throw some tallow in there, turn on the heat, take my bath. By the time I get out of the bathtub, it's hot, and I drop the chicken in there, cook it up. If it's an iguana, I'll be boiling the iguana, or I'll fry the iguana. If it's a duck, I'll usually fry that. So if I did catch one of the ducks or iguanas around here, I'll have to prepare that. So usually, it'll take longer, and I'll usually do that before I take my bath. And then I like to cook the meat as fresh as possible. But if it has to sit in the refrigerator for a day, that's okay. I mean, the iguana tastes the same the next day as it does the day that you catch it. But yeah, I look forward to the meat. But anything else, it doesn't appeal to me. There's a place near my house. It's called Chick-fil-A. And a lot of people, they like to eat that. But every time I go by that place, the smell of the chicken makes me feel like nauseous. I just don't find it appealing in any way. And the thought of eating chicken that's covered with some mystery coating of flour or whatever the heck it is does not appeal to me. But heart attack chicken, which has the skin still on it, and it's deep fried in delicious tallow, it has a nice crunch to it. It has a very satisfying taste. And yes, I will salt the chicken. I do salt, poultry. Now, Muscovy duck tastes like steak. I don't salt that. I like that kind of wild flavor. I like my beef with a stronger flavor. One of my biggest treats is beef heart. When it's on sale, I'll buy the heart and I'll stew that up, and it's so good. It's like delicious. And I had a friend say, oh, that's too chewy. I said, that's what makes it so good. Because I know a lot of people that chew gum, and I never liked gum. I never understood the concept of chewing gum. But meat is almost like my chewing gum. And I've had times where I get a piece of beef heart and I'll just start chewing on it. And you extract all that delicious beef flavor. And whatever material you can't chew and swallow, you just spit it out. Take some more, pop it in your mouth, keep chewing away. I like foods that I can chew, especially foods that I can kind of grab and rip on it. It makes it's good. They say, well, you're going to hurt your teeth. If you eat all that food, it's going to make your teeth wear out. Well, I got a broken tooth from when I got beat up. Well, not beat up, but they tried to beat me up in junior high. And my bottom teeth are crooked because when I was younger, they grew in. My mouth didn't get as big. But as I got older, the upper one straightened out. I've never had a problem. I haven't been to a dentist since 1986. I haven't had a cavity. And I'll chew. I mean, when I drink water, I chew ice. And they said, oh, that'll make your teeth crack. Well, I've never cracked my tooth. The only time I ever cracked my tooth, I was eating some deer meat and it had some buckshot in it. And it got back there and cracked one of my molars because there was some steel shot in there. That was the only time it ever happened. I never cracked my teeth chewing on ice. And chewing meat, it actually is good. I have a friend that whenever the steak's too chewy, it makes his teeth hurt. I said, you shouldn't be hurting. I mean, I chew this stuff all the time. It doesn't bother me. But he's got some kind of gum disease. And, I mean, he has to go to the dentist all the time. And they have to do a deep cleaning. And it just, it's unbelievable. And this is a guy that had braces and all that when he was growing up to straighten his teeth. The teeth were perfect. And then he has to use all those tooth whiteners, to get the teeth white. I don't use toothpaste. I use lard and baking soda. That's what I brush my teeth with. And I'm chewing on this tough meat all the time. I like to chew on bones. Sometimes I'll chew the chicken bones, or sometimes the beef bone. Sometimes you can get it like when you have a T-bone steak, you can kind of
Yeah.
crack it with your teeth and get that little bit of marrow that's in there. And I've never broken a tooth doing any of those things. So they say, well, humans are not carnivores. You can't eat this stuff because of your teeth. I said, really? I eat it all the time. The only bad thing is once in a while you get those meat pieces that get stuck in your teeth and you have to kind of flush that out. I use a little dental floss to get that out. But other than that, it's not a problem. And I only have to brush my teeth once a day. I do it usually around dinner time, and I don't get the plaque or any of the other things on there. So again, if meat was so bad, I should have all my teeth falling out, and it hasn't happened.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed with me, Rick, as well, is in the last 5 weeks, is that my tongue now is a lot more cleaner in the morning. Like that white stuff that you usually get.
I never got that.
You never got that, right? So yeah, well, I mean, if you had ate the conventional way, you would end up with like a white plaque on your tongue in the morning, and you'd have to scrub it off. This is pretty normal. Yeah, this is pretty normal, in amongst society. Yeah, I mean, obviously for you,
Wow.
it's very different. But yeah,
I've never heard of such a thing.
yeah, it's pretty strange. But and I didn't know I've never really known what it was, and because I've grown up with it, I've never questioned it before. But now that I'm eating meat only, it's gone. So now I'm thinking, oh right, it's the carbs and the flipping sugar and all that crap that I've been eating. And that's what it is. It's the leftovers in the morning, So yeah, it's all cleared up.
That's interesting. That's the first time I've ever heard of that. That's kind of that sounds disgusting.
It is. It is disgusting. Now that I think about it, it's like that's not normal. That shouldn't be fucking happening. Like why is my tongue white? Like I don't mean all of it white, but at the back, there's like all this plaque and build up and stuff like that.
I've never had that. Oh, amazing.
Yeah, yeah. Rick, we've been going now for nearly an hour and a half, and I need to get going. But I could talk to you for another 2 hours at least. I'm pretty sure there's loads that we could go into. I would love to continue this conversation at some point, and talk more, about whatever it is that you want to talk about in terms of carnivore. But we can say that for another day if you be open to that.
Of course.
Fantastic. All right then, Rick, I'm going to let you go.
All right.
Like I said, a great pleasure to talk to you. All the best.